Hi, this is Moni with FengShui for Us. Today we are answering the question, is Vastu the same as Feng Shui? Vastu comes from India and Feng Shui comes from China. The meaning of Vastu is dwelling or house with a corresponding plot of land. The meaning of Feng Shui is wind and water. People often refer to Vastu as the Indian Feng Shui, and some people go as far as saying that Vastu precedes and gave origin to Feng Shui. This is actually not true, and you're going to see why. Vastu comes from Indian philosophy, and Feng Shui comes from traditional Chinese philosophy. In Indian philosophy, they acknowledge 5 elements that connect the spiritual realm with the physical realm, and those elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And as you can see, there is supposed to be, with each element, a little more density. So you are going from ether, which is an energy that cannot be touched or seen by most people, to air, which you cannot see but you can feel and you can see the effects of it, to fire, which you can't hold but you can produce and feel its heat. Then you go to water, which you can actually contain and hold, and then to earth, which represents the physical. Now, Feng Shui also recognizes 5 elements, but these 5 elements have a circular relationship, and the elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. Now, it is important that you know that when we're talking about earth in the Vastu system, it's not the same as talking about earth in the Feng Shui system. When we talk about fire in Vastu, it is not equivalent to talking about fire in Feng Shui. These elements represent degrees of density in reality, whereas these elements represent essences or movements in the world. In the Chinese system, water feeds wood, wood feeds fire, fire produces earth, earth yields metals, and metal conducts water. And there are other relationships, but we are not going to get into that today. The important thing to remember here is that this is a vertical perception of the world, and this is a circular perception of the world. Vastu comes from India and Feng Shui comes from China. They both are believed to be at least 5,000 years old. Also from India, we have a traditional type of Indian medicine called Ayurveda. In China, we have a traditional Chinese medicine called acupuncture. From India, we get yoga. From China, we get Tai Chi. From India, we get Vastu. And from China, we get Feng Shui. But you would never say that Ayurveda is equal to acupuncture. You would never say that yoga is equal to Tai Chi. You would also not say that Vastu is equal to Feng Shui. They are not the same. They are different systems, very distinct. You also wouldn't say that Ayurveda gave rise to acupuncture. You wouldn't say that yoga gave rise to Tai Chi. You also cannot say that Vastu gave rise to Feng Shui. They are different systems that come from completely different views of the world. In Vastu, you get rules for building from the ground up, but this art does not provide a lot of corrections for buildings already built. And again, it has this vertical view of the world. In Feng Shui, you do have rules for building from the ground up, but it also offers numerous corrections for existing buildings, and it is based on this circular view of the world that we mentioned before. Vastu separates the sacred from the mundane, considering the mundane not as good as the sacred, and it considers the home as being sacred. Feng Shui embraces both the sacred and the mundane, and it designates a specific area of the home as sacred, but it celebrates all aspects of life. I want to just talk about one aspect of Vastu and Feng Shui that illustrates how different they are, and that also shows you where these differences come from. Here in this map in the green you can see India and you can see China in the orange. So you see that they are neighbors. They have the Himalayas separating them. China is at the same latitude roughly as the United States, and India is at the same latitude as Mexico and Central America. So this is the equator line. If you think about the kind of weather that you have in the United States and the kind of weather that you would have in Mexico and Central America, including the Bahamas, you can get a comparison of the difference in weather that exists between China and India. They are very different in terms of weather. This is a more temperate climate with more defined seasons, and this is a much more tropical climate. So in a Vastu, the south is considered a terrible direction for a building to face. And in Feng Shui, the south is considered the most auspicious direction for a building to face in terms of weather and relationship to the environment. Now, in a place like China, having a south-facing entrance guarantees that you are going to have a young or warm, happy entrance all year long. However, in a much hotter place like India, this wouldn't be the case. Having a south-facing entrance would mean that you are going to have an extremely hot entrance. Just to give you an idea of how hot it is in India, traditionally, people from India will take a long nap from around noon until 3 p.m., which is the hottest time of the day, because it is so hot and humid that it is very difficult to do anything else. So in a place with this kind of heat exposure, you would not want to have a building with a door or large openings as windows facing the south. However, you could still have a very nice building facing the south, provided you have a very ample, generous porch in front of the building. Much of the traditional knowledge, either in Vastu or Feng Shui, as you can see in this example, is based on their particular geographic and climatic conditions. It is correct to say that Vastu is the Indian art of placement and that Feng Shui is the Chinese art of placement. So they are both arts of placement, but they are not the same. They are very different because they come from very different perceptions of the world. This view of the world is a metaphysical view of the world. The Feng Shui view is an empirical understanding of the world based on experience and in the analysis of the relationships between the elements.